The Galactic Academy of Cognitive Sciences had stood for 4,000 years. In that time, it had broken generals, shattered philosophers, humbled 17 species who called themselves the apex of intellect. The Vexari had wept. The Soluan had simply walked out, not in triumph, but in surrender. The crystalline hive minds of Theta Ceti had collectively dissolved their shared consciousness rather than face the final examination a second time. No one passed on their first attempt. That was not a rumor. That was policy. Joe, Academy Registrar, a long-limbed Vexari with 4 blinking silver eyes, pressed a stylus against his ledger when the human cadet walked through the examination chamber doors. He had processed 11,000 candidates across his career. He had never once needed to note anything unusual in the first attempt column. Today, he uncapped a different colored ink, just in case. Mara Ellison walked into the chamber like she had already been there before. She was 23 years old. Brown hair pulled back. Regulation gray uniform. No augmentations, no neural uplinks. The Academy forbade them for the final examination, which was the point. Strip away the scaffolding. See what the mind itself could do. The chamber was a perfect white sphere, 40 meters in diameter. At its center sat a single desk. On the desk sat a single tablet. Professor Kale Veyron stood to the side, arms folded inside his ceremonial robes. He was of the Death Re, a species whose entire culture had been built around the philosophy that intelligence was suffering. They believed that to think deeply was to be unmade, slowly, by the weight of what you understood. His examination had been designed to prove that belief. Me, a second-year cadet who had failed the exam twice and now served as Veyron's unofficial assistant, stood at the observation port above the chamber and watched the human sit down. She tapped the glass with one claw tip. "She seems calm," Me said. "They always do," Veyron replied, "at first." The tablet activated. The examination was not multiple choice. It was not an essay. It was not a test of knowledge or recall or even logic in the conventional sense. The final examination of the Galactic Academy of Cognitive Sciences was a recursive paradox engine. It presented the subject with a problem, and then, as the subject began to solve it, the problem responded. It learned. It adapted. It found the exact shape of the solver's mind and then constructed a contradiction specifically tailored to collapse it. No solution existed. The point was not to solve. The point was to survive the attempt long enough to demonstrate that your mind could endure the dissolution. Most candidates lasted between 3 and 9 hours. The record, held by a Soluan elder with 200 years of meditative practice, was 14 hours, 12 minutes. After that, they would submit a partial answer, the Academy would score the quality of their reasoning, and they would be ranked accordingly. No one submitted a complete solution. Because there was no complete solution. That was the exam. New York. The chamber's environmental monitor, a short and perpetually nervous Hruvian, was watching the biometric readouts at his station when he noticed something strange. Mara Ellison's heart rate was 62 beats per minute. Resting. He blinked his 4 eyes in sequence, a sign of confusion among his people. He checked the sensor calibration. It was fine. He checked again at the 5-minute mark. Still 62. He leaned toward his comms unit. "Professor Veyron?" "What?" "The human's biometrics are flat." A long pause. "Flat how?" "Resting state flat." "She's not even, I don't see a stress response." "At all." Another pause, longer. "Then, that's not possible." The exam initiates a low-grade cognitive destabilization within 90 seconds. It's built into the introductory sequence. "I know, sir." "Then she's suppressing the readout somehow." "She's not augmented, sir." "We scanned her." Veyron said nothing. He walked to the observation port and stood beside me, and they both looked down at the human, who was sitting completely still, reading the tablet, her chin resting in one hand. She looked like someone reading a mildly interesting novel on a slow afternoon. At the 12-minute mark, Day, the senior academy archivist, a vexillary elder who had witnessed 341 final examinations, received an alert on her personal comm unit. She found this unusual. The alert system was only triggered for examinations that fell outside standard deviation parameters. She put down her tea and walked to the monitoring center. By the time she arrived, there were 7 staff members clustered around the biometric display. Mara Ellison's readings had not changed. "How long?" Day asked. 14 minutes, New York told her. "And she hasn't, the exam hasn't." "The exam is responding to her," New York said carefully. "It has escalated 3 times. Standard escalation protocol. She's just reading it." Day stood very still. "Has she started writing yet?" "No." "Then she's still in the comprehension phase." "Surely she'll begin to." "She just picked up the stylus," Me said from the observation port. Every head in the room turned toward the monitor screen. What happened in the next 4 minutes was later discussed, debated, and formally reviewed by a committee of 9 species over a period of 2 years. The committee's final report used the phrase anomalous resolution pathway 47 times and ultimately concluded that it could not fully explain what Mara Ellison had done. What the monitoring team observed, in real time, was this. She wrote. Not slowly. Not in the halting, rewrite rethink restart pattern of every other candidate in recorded history. She wrote the way a mathematician writes when they are not discovering, when they are recording. Like the answer was already there, fully formed, and her hand was simply transcribing it. Hi, the exam's adaptive intelligence core, an ancient system that had spent 4 millennia learning to think faster than anything it encountered, began sending alerts at the 17-minute mark. Escalation 4. Escalation 5. The paradox deepened, branched, doubled back on itself. Mara Ellison's stylus did not stop. At 19 minutes and 41 seconds, the system's primary output handler flagged something that had never been flagged before. A complete solution pathway. Not a partial answer. Not a "this is the best we could do before our mind gave way" submission. A complete, self-consistent, internally non-contradictory solution to a problem specifically designed to have none. Ran the verification twice. Then a 3rd time. Then sent an emergency query to every senior logic verification module in the building. They all returned the same result. Professor Cale Veyron was still at the observation port when the tablet chimed. That sound, a soft, clear tone, was the submission sound. Every candidate heard it at the end of their exam. It signified that time had expired, or that the candidate had chosen to end their attempt. It was not supposed to sound at 19 minutes and 41 seconds. Veyron stared through the glass. Mara Ellison set down her stylus. Folded her hands on the desk. And then she looked up, directly at the observation port, which was mirrored from her side, which meant she should not have been able to see him. She looked anyway. And she waited. The door to the examination chamber opened 40 seconds later. Veyron walked in alone. He stood across the desk from her. He looked down at the tablet. He looked up at her. She met his eyes without blinking. You solved it, he said. The words felt strange in his mouth. He had never said them before. It wasn't unsolvable, Mara said. It was designed to feel unsolvable. Those aren't the same thing. Veyron stared at her for a long time. Every species that has encountered this examination, he said slowly, has eventually accepted the premise. That the dissolution is the point. That the mind cannot hold what the universe holds. That intelligence is, at its limit, a form of grief. Mara Ellison looked at him with something that was not quite pity and not quite amusement, but somewhere in the territory between the two. That's a very dramatic way to design an exam, she said. Veyron blinked. Humans don't accept premises, she continued, leaning back slightly in her chair. We question them. Especially the ones that are trying to make us feel small. She tapped the tablet once with her finger. Your paradox assumed the solver would treat every branch as equal weight. It assumed the solver would try to hold the whole thing in their head at once. It assumed the solver would be afraid of being wrong. She paused. We're not. We're used to being wrong. We do it constantly. We've built entire scientific traditions around it. Being wrong is just the first draft. The chamber was very quiet. From the observation port above, 6 beings of 4 different species pressed against the glass. Joe opened his different-colored ink and wrote, for the first time in 4,000 years, in the first attempt, complete resolution column. Human. Cadet Mara Ellison. Time elapsed, 19 minutes, 41 seconds. Notes, mind intact. Returned stylus neatly. Asked if there was a second exam. There was not. But they started designing one.